The first card failed, while my son's wife was still smiling. "I think the machine glitched," Evan said. Already reaching for another card, his voice was confident. Practiced. The kind he used when he believed the problem would bend out of his way. The clerk didn't look annoyed. She looked careful. "You can try again," she said. "The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative." Lydia handed over a second card without hesitation, then a third, then a fourth. Each time, the same quiet sound. "Declined. I wasn't in the boutique. I was sitting on the edge of a narrow hotel bed. My coat folded beside me. My phone resting in my hand. One notification after another appeared on the screen, neat and emotionless. Attempted purchase. Declined. Attempted purchase. Declined. "Just keep trying," Evan told her. "They're all active. They've always worked." I knew his tone. I'd heard it my entire life. It was the tone he used when he believed something was his, simply because it had always been there. "My name is Meredith Caldwell," I said softly to no one, as if reminding myself. 71 years old, widowed, mother, the owner of every account tied to those cards. "Across the city," Lydia's voice sharpened. "This is embarrassing. It's not." Evan snapped. "It's a banking error. My mother handles the accounts." She must have missed something. I watched another alert arrive, then another. 20 cards in total, all tied to my name. All opened over years of helping, of trusting, of saying yes when it would have been easier to say no. The clerk finally spoke again. "Sir, none of these cards are going through." Evan lowered his voice. "That's impossible." It wasn't, not anymore. That morning, before Lydia stepped into that boutique, Evan had told me I needed to leave my own house. He said it calmly, kindly, even, as if the decision had already been agreed upon by everyone who mattered. I stood up, slipped my phone into my bag, and breathed in slowly. Whatever Evan believed about ownership, about access, about me, was about to change. I had already been told I no longer belonged in my own home. The house had never belonged to Evan, no matter how confidently he spoke inside it. Thomas and I bought it 30 years earlier, when Charleston still felt smaller and quieter. I remember signing the papers with my own hand. My name written clearly beside my husband's. No loans hanging over us. No favors owed. We paid it off with careful saving, overtime hours, and years of choosing practicality over comfort. After Thomas passed, the deed stayed exactly where it was, in my name, unchanged. Evan moved back in during a temporary rough patch. That was the phrase he used. Temporary turned into months, then years. Lydia followed, suitcases and expectations included. At first, Evan asked permission for everything. "Is it all right if we repaint the guest room? Would you mind if we hosted Thanksgiving here?" I said yes. I always said yes, over time. The language shifted. "Our place has great light in the mornings," Evan said once, while talking to a neighbor. I corrected him gently. He smiled and waved it off. "Mom, you know what I mean." Lydia never corrected him. She leaned into it. "We're thinking of updating the kitchen," she told a friend on the phone, standing 3 feet from me. "This house has so much potential." I didn't interrupt. I told myself it wasn't worth it. Then came the introductions. "This is Evan." Someone said at a neighborhood gathering, "He owns the house on Church Street." I opened my mouth to speak. Evan spoke first. "Well, technically," he paused, glanced at me, and finished. "It's a family place." Family place. Later that night, I mentioned it quietly. "People think the house is yours." Evan didn't look surprised. It's easier that way, he said, less explaining what I asked. That you still live here, Lydia added, not unkindly, just practical. Still, I understood something then that I hadn't allowed myself to understand before. My generosity had been interpreted as surrender. My silence had been mistaken for consent. Somewhere between helping my son and trusting him, the facts had been rewritten without my permission, and Evan had grown very comfortable in a story where the house had never really been mine at all. Evan didn't raise his voice when he began telling me what to do. That was the first thing I noticed. Mom, you don't need to worry about that, he said one morning when I asked about a contractor he'd hired without mentioning it. I already handled it. Handled it how? With whose money I didn't ask. I nodded. Because that was easier than standing in my own kitchen and arguing about authority I shouldn't have had to defend. Lydia made it sound softer. Evan's just trying to take the pressure off you, she said, placing a hand on his arm. You've done enough, as if I had reached some invisible limit, and everything beyond it belonged to them. When the property tax notice arrived, I opened it at the table like I always did. Evan glanced at the envelope and reached for it before I could speak. I'll take care of that, he said. I usually review it first, I replied. He smiled, the patient kind. Trust me, it's fine. That was how it went after that. Conversations ended before they started. Decisions were announced after they were made. We're hosting friends this weekend, Lydia said one afternoon. I told them yes already. I was planning to have Ruth over, I said quietly. Evan didn't even look up from his phone. You can reschedule, like I was the guest. When I tried to push back, even gently, Evan's tone hardened just enough to remind me who he thought was in charge. Mom, this back and forth is exhausting, he said once. Let us manage things. I realized then that they hadn't asked my opinion in weeks. They didn't check in. They didn't pause. They informed me, as if I were an employee who no longer needed full details. One evening, I mentioned repainting the living room back to its original color. Evan shook his head. We already decided against that. Decided? With whom I asked. He finally looked at me, irritation flickering across his face. Why are you making this difficult? I didn't answer. I sat there, hands folded, listening to the way my own house sounded when I was no longer the one being consulted. Somewhere along the way, love had been rewritten as access, and access had quietly turned into control. Evan waited until after dinner. That should have warned me. He stood by the counter, arms folded, watching me rinse my plate like it was a habit he was already planning to erase. Mom, he said, calm and deliberate, we need to talk about living arrangements. I dried my hands slowly. All right. Lydia stayed seated. Her eyes were fixed on her phone, thumb moving, screen glowing. She didn't look up. Evan cleared his throat. Claire and I need privacy. Space to build our life properly. I nodded once, and he hesitated, just long enough to sound reasonable. We think it would be best if you stayed somewhere else for a while. Somewhere else. This is my home, I said, evenly. Yes, he replied, too quickly. But you don't need this much space anymore. Mom, the words landed cleanly, like he had practiced them. Like this wasn't a suggestion, but a conclusion. I looked at Lydia. Is that how you feel? She lifted her head just enough to meet my eyes for a second. Then she looked away. Evan's just trying to do what's best for everyone. Everyone except me. How long, I asked. Evan shrugged. We'll see how it goes. You could stay with Ruth or get a hotel. Just until things settle. Things. I repeated. He sighed. The sound of someone tired of explaining himself. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I laughed once. Quietly. I'm not making anything. Lydia finally spoke, still not looking at me. We assumed you'd understand. Assumed. I thought of the deed in my desk drawer, of the years Thomas and I spent paying for this house, of every time I said yes so my son wouldn't struggle. I wasn't asked. I said. Evan's expression tightened. We didn't think we had to. Silence filled the room, heavy, settled, familiar in a way that hurt more than shouting would have. I picked up my keys from the table. I'll pack a bag. Evan relaxed, relief flickering across his face. Thank you. Mom, this is for the best. Lydia stood and moved past me, brushing my shoulder without meeting my eyes. As I walked upstairs, I understood something with painful clarity. Evan wasn't worried I might refuse. He was certain I would comply. Evan liked to tell people the cards were for convenience. That word made everything sound reasonable. The truth was slower and less dramatic. There wasn't a moment when I handed him 20 credit cards at once. There were years. The first card came after his father died. Just in case. Evan said, emergencies. I agreed. I didn't want my son worrying about money while he was grieving. The second came when his car broke down on the interstate. The third, when Lydia moved in and they were getting back on their feet. One for groceries, one for travel, one tied to a joint account I controlled but rarely checked out loud. Every time. He promised it was temporary. I'll close it once things stabilize. I won't use it unless I have to. You know I'm good for it. Mom, I believed him because believing felt easier than suspicion over the years. The cards multiplied, different banks, different purposes, all under my name, all with limits I set and paid on time. Evan never asked how much was available. He never asked if it was still all right. He stopped asking altogether. When I once mentioned a charge that looked out of place, Evan waved it off. That was Lydia. We needed something last minute. Needed another time. I suggested consolidating accounts. There's no reason to complicate things, he said, his tone firm. This system works. For him, it did. What Evan never seemed to realize was that access didn't change ownership. Every statement still came to me. Every alert. Every payment. I read them all. I kept copies. I noticed patterns. I noticed when groceries turned into boutiques, when emergencies turned into habits, when help turned into expectation. I never confronted him. Not once. I paid the balances. I closed my mouth. I told myself it was temporary, the same way he had told me. 20 cards. 20 times I chose trust over boundaries. As I folded clothes into my overnight bag that night, I understood something I hadn't wanted to face before. Silence. Repeated often enough. Doesn't sound like kindness anymore. It sounds like permission. And I had given Evan permission for a very long time. I packed only what I needed. One suitcase, one coat, no photographs. Evan stood in the doorway while I folded clothes, arms crossed, waiting for something, anger, maybe. I gave him neither. You don't have to rush, he said, as if he were doing me a favor. I'm not, I replied. Lydia hovered behind him, pretending to straighten a picture frame that hadn't moved in years. She didn't say goodbye. When I reached the front door, I set my keys on the small table by the stairs. Evan glanced at them and nodded, satisfied. Text me when you get settled, he said. I didn't promise that I would. The hotel was modest and quiet. The clerk asked how long I planned to stay. I told her I wasn't sure. She slid the key card across the counter and wished me a pleasant evening. Her voice held more warmth than I'd heard at home in weeks. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone. No messages. No concern. No questions about whether I'd eaten or arrived safely. The phone rang just after I took off my shoes. Mom, Evan said, his voice tight. There's a problem. I waited. One of the cards didn't work. He continued. Lydia was trying to pick something up. Just a small thing. I see. I said. You must have missed a payment or something. He added quickly. Can you check? I looked at the screen. Another alert had already come through. Declined. I'll look into it. I said, that would be good. Evan replied, relief creeping back into his tone. We need this fixed. After we hung up, I sat very still. The quiet pressed in, but it wasn't lonely. It was clear. The first thing my son reached for wasn't my well-being. It was reassurance that nothing had really changed. I placed the phone face down on the nightstand and lay back, staring at the ceiling. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't argued. I hadn't fought to stay where I was no longer wanted. But somewhere between leaving my keys behind and answering that call, something inside me shifted. Evan believed distance only meant space. He didn't understand that distance can also mean boundaries. I didn't open the banking app right away. I made tea instead. I sat on the edge of the bed. I let the silence settle long enough for impulse to pass. Anger would have been faster. Cancel everything. Shut it all down. Make a statement. But statements invite arguments. I wasn't interested in arguing anymore. When I finally unlocked my phone, the app opened exactly where I expected it to. 20 cards. 20 familiar number seams, each one tied to my name, my credit, my responsibility. I tapped the first account. The screen showed recent activity. Boutique names I recognized from conversations Lydia liked to have loudly, as if money carried farther when spoken with confidence. I lowered the daily spending limit to $1. The app asked me to confirm. I pressed yes. The second card, $1, confirm. The third, the fourth, the fifth. My phone buzzed once. Softly, after each change. No warning, no delay. Just a clean confirmation line beneath every adjustment, effective immediately. I thought of every time Evan told me something would be temporary. Every time Lydia said it was just this once. Every time I paid without comment, halfway through. My phone rang. I didn't answer. I finished the remaining cards carefully. No rush. No shaking hands. Each limit lowered with the same steady motion, like turning down a dimmer switch rather than flipping a breaker. When I was done, I set the phone down and stared at it for a moment. 20 cards. Still active, still technically usable, just no longer capable of funding a lifestyle built on assumptions. The phone rang again. I let it ring. A message followed. Evan's name lit up the screen. Something's wrong. Call me. I picked up the phone and turned it face down. I wasn't hiding. I was choosing timing. Because this wasn't about punishment. It was about clarity. About showing him, quietly and unmistakably, that access had always been conditional, even when I forgot to enforce it. I lay back on the bed and closed my eyes. Somewhere across the city, Evan was learning a lesson he had never believed he needed. And for the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to soften the impact. Evan called 3 times before I answered. When I finally did, he didn't say hello. What did you do? His voice was sharp, breathless, already past courtesy. Behind him, I heard Lydia crying, not quietly, not privately, the kind of crying meant to be overheard. I adjusted the accounts. I said, "You can't just do that," he snapped. "Claire's standing in the middle of a store. Everyone's staring. This is humiliating, humiliating, not hurtful, not wrong, humiliating. I told you there was a problem," he continued. "You said you'd look into it." I did. Lydia's voice cut in, thin and shaking. "Meredith, please. There must be a mistake. These cards have always worked." "They still work," I said. "They're active." Evan exhaled sharply. "Then explain why none of them are going through." "Because the daily limit is $1. Silence. Then Lydia gasped. $1? That's right. Evan's voice dropped. Dangerous now. Fix it. Right now. No. You don't get to punish us because you're upset, he said. This is our money too. I closed my eyes for a moment before speaking. No, it isn't, he laughed. Short and incredulous. I've been using those cards for years. With my permission, I replied. Permission is not ownership. You're overreacting, he said. You left. That was your choice. I left because you told me to, I said, and while you were deciding where I no longer belonged, you assumed my support would continue uninterrupted. Lydia sobbed louder. We didn't think you'd actually do this. That's the problem, I said. You never thought about what I would do. Evan lowered his voice, trying a different angle. Mom, this is ridiculous. You're my mother, and you're my son. I said, which is why I didn't cancel the cards. I took nothing from you. He paused. I took it back. The line went quiet, not disconnected, just stunned. I ended the call myself and set the phone down. The silence afterward was different from before. Heavier, final. Evan had spent years believing access was permanent. Now he understood it had always been conditional, even when I forgot to remind him. The attorney's office was quiet in the way serious places are quiet. She introduced herself as Marianne Foley, slid a legal pad across the table, and listened without interrupting. I need everything restored to its proper place, I said. Not escalated. Corrected. Marianne nodded once. Then we'll be precise. She asked for documents. I handed them over. Deeds. Statements. Authorization records. Years of careful order Evan had mistaken for passivity. Marianne scanned the papers. The house is solely in your name, she said. There's no ambiguity. There never was, I replied. She tapped her pen. And the accounts I want all third-party access revoked. Immediately. That includes your son. Yes. Marianne didn't flinch. We'll send notice today. She drafted the letter while I watched. The language was clean, unemotional. Authorization terminated, access revoked. Any future attempt to use accounts without written permission would be treated as unauthorized activity. Say it plainly. I told her. She looked up. Fraud. Yes. She typed the word and slid the paper toward me. Sign here. I signed. My phone buzzed while she printed copies. Evan's name lit the screen. I didn't answer. Marianne gathered the documents into a folder. I'll also record a formal notice regarding occupancy, she said. Not an eviction, a clarification. Clarify what that continued residence requires your consent, she said. Consent you haven't given. I nodded. Send it. Outside. I called Evan back. He answered on the first ring. You went to a lawyer, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes. You're serious, he added. Quieter now. I've always been serious, I said. I was just silent. This is extreme. He said. We didn't think you'd go this far. I didn't go far, I replied. I went correct. There was breathing on the line. Lydia's voice murmured something I couldn't hear. You're cutting us off, Evan said. I'm restoring boundaries, I said. There's a difference. He started to argue. I ended the call. By the time I reached the hotel, the confirmations were already in my inbox. Access removed. Notices sent. Ownership reaffirmed. Consequences didn't need my voice to carry them. They had paperwork now. I did not move back into the house right away. Evan expected me to. He left a message that sounded almost polite. We should talk about when you're coming home, he said, as if nothing irreversible had happened. I didn't respond. The notices arrived before the end of the week. Bank access revoked. Cards permanently closed. Occupancy clarified. Lydia called once, then never again. Evan stopped calling altogether after the lawyer followed up with a second letter, short, factual, impossible to argue with. They downsized quietly. No announcement. No explanation to friends. The kind of move people make when image collapses, but pride insists on silence. The shopping stopped. The dinners out ended. Invitations dried up when the credit that supported them did. I heard about it through Ruth, who heard it through someone else. They're staying with friends for now, she said gently. It's been an adjustment. I thanked her and changed the subject. When Evan finally asked to meet, I agreed on my terms. A public place. Daytime. No assumptions. He arrived looking smaller, tired. He spoke first. I didn't think you'd really cut us off. I didn't cut you off. I said. I stopped financing behavior that pushed me out of my own life. He opened his mouth, closed it. Lydia wasn't with him. I thought being your son meant something. He said, it did. I replied, it still does. It just doesn't mean ownership. We parted without hugging, without shouting, without promises. Later that night, alone in my hotel room, I wrote a note to myself, something I wish I had understood earlier. Helping someone should never require erasing yourself. Love does not demand silence. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are clarity. That was the lesson I carried forward. Not bitterness. Not victory. Balance. If this story resonated with you, tap like, leave a comment, or subscribe. Someone out there may need to hear that dignity can be reclaimed quietly and completely. I did not take revenge with anger. I took my life back with precision. And for the first time in years, what I kept was peace.